They walked among us, these ancient thinkers, their minds as vast as the starlit canopy, but they were not Christians, Jews, or Muslims. They poured libations not to a singular, all-powerful god, but to a host of deities such as sky fathers, earth mothers, trickster gods, and the very spirits residing in the rustling leaves of the sacred grove. They were the original deep thinkers, the original spiritual innovators, and their way of life, which modern history, lumped together as paganism, offers a window into a kind of human spirituality that has mostly been forgotten. Now, picture this. A person lights candles on their altar, whispers prayers to ancient gods from thousands of years ago, and heads off to their office job in a modern city. Sounds strange? It's happening right now all around the world. The old gods are back, but they've changed their forms. And the story of how they disappeared and returned tells us something deep about what humans need to feel whole. Part 1. What happened to the old ways? For most of human history, people didn't choose their religion because religion was just there, like the air you breathe. When historians talk about ancient paganism, they aren't talking about a single religion. They're talking about a massive, vibrant tapestry woven from the practices of the Greeks with their Olympian gods, the Romans with their vast pantheon, the Egyptians with their deep Kemetic traditions, and the Norse with Asatru and their fiery gods of war and wisdom. They're also talking about the Maya, Aztec and Inca civilizations in Central and South America, Tengrism in Asia, and pre-Islamic Arabian religions. These ancient practices weren't called paganism back then. The term pagan itself, which comes from the Latin paganus, meaning country dweller or civilian. That word came later, thrown around by Christians who used it as an insult, basically meaning those backwards country people who still worship the old gods. But before that label stuck, these traditions were just life itself. Religion and daily existence were woven together so tightly you couldn't pull them apart without unraveling everything. And in ancient paganism, everything was integrated. The gods were local, tied to the rivers, mountains, and the very health of the city. Their well-being was the community's well-being. When someone in ancient Greece made a sacrifice to Athena, they weren't doing it because they read a holy book and got inspired. Then they did it because that's what kept their city safe and their ancestors happy. If you were a farmer, you made offerings to Demeter for a good harvest. If you were a soldier, you prayed to Ares or Mars for courage. If you sacrificed a goat to Jupiter at the right time, in the right way, with the right words, the god would be satisfied. The gods represented the powerful, often unpredictable forces of nature and human life. You didn't have to have a deep personal belief about the personality of Poseidon. You just had to perform the correct rituals so that your ships wouldn't be destroyed by his storms. This is what scholars call orthopraxy, or right action over orthodoxy, or right belief. Doing the right thing in the right way was what kept the community safe. The gods were like powerful neighbours who needed respect and gifts, or things would go badly. It was practical, it was communal, and it was about keeping the whole group afloat, not about personal spiritual fulfillment. Part 2, when the world changed. Then something massive happened. Christianity spread across Europe like wildfire. Islam swept through the Middle East and beyond. These new religions brought something different. One God, one truth, one book, one way to be saved. They promised eternal life for individuals, not just protection for cities. They offered written rules instead of inherited customs, and they wanted everyone to believe the same things. The old pagan temples closed. The sacred groves got cut down. The priests and priestesses scattered or converted. For more than 1,000 years, it seemed like the ancient gods had packed their bags and left for good. Sure, some practices survived in hidden corners, mixed into folk traditions, or disguised as Christian saints. But as organised religions with public temples and priests, they were gone. Most people assumed they were gone forever. The modern world was supposed to be about science, progress, and moving beyond superstition. Who would want to worship Zeus or Freya when we have telescopes and medicine and democracy? However, the old ways didn't completely disappear. They survived in folk tales about fairies and house spirits, and superstitions about knocking on wood, in the names of the days of the week, including Thursday for Thor and Wednesday for Odin. The deep, intuitive human connection to the cycles of the earth, to the sun and the moon, was too fundamental to be erased. It was buried like a seed in winter, waiting for the right conditions to sprout again. Part 3, the unexpected return, but here's where the story gets interesting. In the 1900s, something nobody predicted started happening. The old gods began showing up again. Not exactly the same way they did before, but real enough that millions of people today identify as pagan, honouring deities that were supposed to be dead and buried. This wasn't some overnight thing. It happened slowly when people began feeling like something was missing in modern life. Cities felt cold and disconnected. Factory work felt meaningless. The natural world was disappearing under concrete, and the mainstream religions, while still important to many, didn't speak to everyone's hunger for something more personal, more connected to nature, more flexible. A man named Gerald Gardner kicked things into high gear in the 1950s when he introduced Wicca, a modern religion that borrowed from ancient witchcraft practices and magical traditions. It spread faster than anyone expected. Then came the hippie movement in the 1960s with its love of nature and questioning of authority. Feminist movements rediscovered ancient goddesses and felt a spiritual pull toward religions that honoured female divine power. Environmentalists found meaning in traditions that treated the earth as sacred. Part 4. Not your ancestors' paganism. But modern paganism isn't just ancient practices with better technology. It's fundamentally different in ways that show how much humans have changed. For starters, it's personal, really personal. It's a swing from the collective to the individual. Modern paganism is overwhelmingly individualistic and elective. Think of it as a spiritual buffet. The practitioner is the chooser, the curator of their own path. They might pull from Greek myth, borrow ritual structure from Wicca, or focus entirely on goddess spirituality. The journey is personalised, often blending elements from different mythologies in an eclectic mix. You might feel a deep connection to the Norse gods and become a heathen. You might be drawn to the wisdom of the Druids and join a druidic order. You might create your own unique blend, taking inspiration from Celtic goddesses, Buddhist meditation and quantum physics. It's about individual spiritual growth, not just keeping your village safe from famine. The relationship with nature has shifted too. Ancient people respected nature because it could kill them. A bad harvest meant starvation. A harsh winter meant death. They made offerings to natural spirits out of fear and necessity. Modern pagans love nature from a place of choice and philosophy. It's a nature-centric morality. They see environmental destruction and want to push back spiritually. They often view the divine as innate, not a distant judge in the sky, but a presence within the world itself. Nature is sacred. Not just pretty, but sacred. Trees aren't just oxygen machines. They're wise elders. Rivers aren't just water, they're living beings. This isn't just poetic, it's philosophical. Modern paganism can manifest as animism, the belief that spirits live in all things, or pantheism, the belief that divinity is the universe. This shift results in a strong focus on environmentalism and ecological ethics. Then there's the whole sacrifice thing. Ancient paganism involved a lot of blood. Animals died on altars regularly. It was how you showed the gods you were serious. Modern pagans find this horrifying. Instead, they lay out flowers, pour wine, burn incense, or create art as offerings. The intent is similar, showing respect and devotion, but the method reflects modern ethics about animal rights and violence. Part 5. 2 paths forward. Modern paganism has split into 2 main approaches, and both are fascinating in their own way. Some practitioners call themselves Reconstructionists. These are the history buffs of the pagan world, and they wear that badge proudly. They dig through ancient texts, study archaeology, learn dead languages, and try to practice their religion as close to the historical version as possible. If you're a Hellenist who follows the Greek gods, you might calculate festival dates using ancient Greek calendars and memorize prayers in classical Greek. If you're into heathenry focusing on Norse traditions, you study the sagas and try to understand what ancient Scandinavians actually believed, not the Hollywood version. The next approach comes from the Eclectics. They see ancient traditions as inspiration, not instruction manuals. A modern witch might honour Greek Hecate one day, Celtic Brigid the next, and throw in some Buddhist meditation and crystal healing because it all feels right. They create new traditions, write new prayers, and adapt everything to fit modern life. Some Reconstructionists think this is disrespectful to ancient cultures. Eclectics argue that religion has always evolved and changed, so why pretend otherwise? Part 6. Philosophy weighs in. The ancient Greek Stoics, for example Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, practiced a form of theological allegory. They believed the traditional gods were personifications of natural forces, virtues, or aspects of the single, rational, divine logos that permeates the universe. For them, participating in public pagan rites was a social duty, but their philosophical belief was in a providential, rational, cosmic order. During the Renaissance, thinkers like Marsilio Ficino and Giovanni Pico della Mirandola revived Neoplatonism and Hermeticism, seeing ancient pagan texts as spiritually valuable. Leibniz, one of the last major voices in this tradition, proposed that virtuous pagans might be saved through their pursuit of truth and goodness, even if they didn't know Christ explicitly. St. Thomas Aquinas believed pagan religion itself was still in error, but pagan philosophy contained valuable tools for understanding God's creation. Friedrich Nietzsche held a deeply romantic and tragic view of pre-Socratic Greek paganism. He saw it as a life-affirming, yes-saying culture that embraced the terrible and beautiful chaos of existence, as exemplified by the duality of the Apollonian. order, beauty, and Dionysian, ecstasy, chaos, forces. Modern philosopher Ludwig Feuerbach saw paganism as embodying the unity of religion and politics, spirit and nature, God and man. Other modern thinkers like Arne Naess, founder of deep ecology, have looked to pagan and animistic worldviews as alternatives to the Judeo-Christian anthropocentrism that they believe has justified the exploitation of nature. Paganism's sacralization of the natural world is seen as a valuable resource for developing a more ecocentric ethic. While a psychologist, Carl Jung's influence on philosophy and religious studies is immense. He interpreted pagan gods and myths not as literal beings, but as archetypes of the collective unconscious, as universal patterns and symbols inherent in the human psyche. For Jung, engaging with pagan myths was a path to psychological integration and wholeness. In the words of William Wordsworth from his poem, "The world is too much with us," he states, "I'd rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn, so might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn." Part 7. What it means to worship now. The most striking difference between ancient and modern paganism shows up in ethics. Ancient religions didn't really have universal moral codes. You made sure the gods got their due, you kept your oaths, you honoured your family, and beyond that, morality was situational. Different rules applied to different people in different circumstances. Modern paganism flipped this completely. Ethics became central. Wiccans follow the reed, and it harm none, do what you will. It's basically be a good person and don't hurt others, wrapped in poetic language. Many pagans believe in something like karma, where your actions come back to you threefold. They focus on personal responsibility, consent, and treating everyone with respect. This shift happened because modern pagans are choosing their religion in a world with lots of options. They want their spirituality to align with their values. If you care about social justice, your religion should support that. If you're passionate about protecting nature, your gods should care too. Ancient people didn't have this luxury. You got the religion you were born into, and it had to fit everyone in your tribe, whether they were kind or cruel, brave or cowardly. Part 8. Why the gods came back. So, why did paganism return? What hole in modern life does it fill? For many people, it's about connection. Connection to nature in a world that's mostly concrete and steel. Connection to ancestors and heritage in a time when family traditions have faded. Connection to the sacred in everyday life. Not just on Sunday morning in a church, it's also about freedom. Modern paganism doesn't have a pope or a central authority telling you what to believe. It doesn't have a single holy book you have to follow. You can question, adapt, change your mind, and follow your own spiritual instincts. For people who feel restricted by rigid religious structures, this flexibility feels like breathing fresh air after being stuck in a stuffy room, and there's something else. Modern life can feel empty. We work jobs that feel meaningless. We live in cities where we don't know our neighbours. We scroll through fake lives on social media and wonder why we feel lonely. Ancient paganism connected people to their community and gave their actions cosmic meaning. Modern paganism tries to do the same thing, but for individuals in a fragmented world. Part 9. The dance between old and new. The ancient pagans taught us how to integrate the divine into the polis, the city-state. The modern pagans teach us how to integrate the divine into the self and the planet. However, the evolution from ancient to modern paganism hasn't been a straight line. It's more like a spiral, circling back to old ideas while moving forward into new territory. The names of the gods stayed the same, but everything else transformed. Ancient pagans would probably be confused by their modern counterparts. No sacrifice? Religion as a personal choice? Worrying about the feelings of animals and trees? It would seem soft, maybe even disrespectful, but they might also recognize something familiar. The human need to feel connected to something bigger, to mark the seasons, to ask for help from powers beyond ourselves, and to find meaning in a complicated world. Modern pagans aren't trying to turn back the clock. They can't unlearn science or pretend we still live in small tribes where everyone shares the same gods. Instead, they're doing something more current and creative. They're taking old wisdom, old stories, and old practices and asking, what still works? What speaks to us now? What can we adapt without losing what made it powerful in the first place? The answer is still being written. Every person who lights candles to ancient gods, every ritual adapted for modern apartments, every new interpretation of old myths adds another page. The gods never really left. They just waited for humans to be ready to talk to them in a new way.